This year was very challenging for all of us. I can only imagine what it's been like to try to finish school, prepare for your life after ID. Can you tell me what your greatest challenge has been during this final year, and what do you think how it's prepared you for your future?
Yeah, so I want to say like my final year is basically remote, online. So when I first come to ID to this beautiful building, I basically just stay here every day, like from 9 to 9, basically every day. Even if I'm not having class, but I just like being here so that I have opportunity to talk to more people. So like students always walking around as well as professors. So and sometimes we just gather in those community area, and I really like the atmosphere that I don't have to be very intentional. But as we are moving online, I think the biggest challenge for me is to how I can engage with other people, to not be like totally intentional, but in order to like help each other to go through this disruption period. So I think it really helped me to move forward to the future because the world is always changing, and as designer we really need to be like adaptive, and we are a community. So even if we are not like together in a physical world, I think it's still really useful that you be open and proactive and reach out when you need help and offer help when you could. So that's the biggest learning for me from this year. What about you?
I would say there were two big challenges for me. The first one was figuring out how to stay connected as well. As much as I'm an introvert, I realized like who I am as like a person requires me to like be engaged with others. So it's like, how can I do that in this like virtual context? So it took a lot of trial and error in the beginning to figure it out. And then the other was the pandemic really revealed that I had really poor self-care habits. Because I would literally, because like my room, first and foremost, is just like super small. So it's like my desk is right near my bed. So it's like shower, eat, and then I'm right at my desk. And so it was like there wasn't a way to differentiate between like work and rest. So really being intentional, like going for walks or like trying to do like a staycation. Like I did a staycation maybe a month ago. Just like I was like, Dad, I love you, but I need a break.
Like prioritizing what's most important for us is really important because there is always too much for you to do.
For sure.
Yes, and everything seems like important, but like you should know like what matters to you the most. So I mean, when I'm talking to my folks on like right now, we always like try to remember and talk about like what the time was like when we were in Kaplan Institute, and we're just like so how to say that we love that a lot. And I wonder for you, Akilah, when you look back at your time in ID, what made you smile the most?
The part that makes me smile the most first is the relationships with people. Meeting people who I know that I might not have met if I hadn't gone to ID. Learning from them, their lives, their experiences, their cultures, that really shaped my perspective of the world and just kind of like my worldview. And the other piece of it for me is, what happened during that time at ID. And for me, it was like a fundamental shift where I decided and knew that I no longer wanted to design objects. I wanted to design experiences. And for me, those experiences were about, making a better world and in turn a better future. And all of that was, kind of shaped by the coursework and the research and the intersection of that with those experiences with people. And, I think a lot about the great novelists like Alice Walker, who talks about, the present that you're constructing should essentially represent the future that you're dreaming. And I see that quote having so much meaning and connection to all of those experiences that I had at ID that still lives with me today.
To build on that, so who you were before your ID journey and who you are now may vary minimally or like very explicitly. What are those changes? What are some of those changes that you've noticed, and are you pleased with some of them?
Who I was then and who I am now, I feel like there's the core that's still the same. Like there's the core that is centered around compassion for others, making a difference in the world, like fostering space for creativity, continuously wanting to learn. But what I feel that's changed the most is a sense of urgency. Urgency to make a difference. I feel like my intolerance for injustice and inequities has become more urgent. I think that those are much more pronounced just based off of living. You have your own lived experiences, you learn from others, you witness loved ones having their own lived experiences, and it sharpens your lens. And for me, like, sharpening your lens is a part of growth. And, like, we should always be in that space of growth. And so that's where I feel like, who I was then is at the core of who I am now, just a more amplified version. Thinking about all of the experiences at ID, what do you want to be like the defining factors of your careers and your futures? And alongside that, like what equates success for you in those paths?
Yeah, Tommie, do you want to go first?
I think for me, one thing in particular, I was very vocal about it, that I am the only Black student native to Chicago in the program right now. And I think that's definitely an area of improvement that ID, and I think IIT as a whole can work on. The fact that we are situated in a predominantly Black community and that the residents don't see this as like an option to attend school. We need to change that. I think that representation is so important. So for me, in my career, I want to amplify representation in as many spaces as possible, because when you see yourself, the dream evolves from a dream to becoming something tangible.
So I always say that I've been in the Ivory Tower most of my time, and I really love being a student, because being a student can enable you to ask questions, even if it is like stupid question you say, and to think differently and make mistake, be able to experience. So I think it's really important, if I'm like, when I'm developing my career, still be true to myself and ask questions when I see one, and be able to be reflect like what makes you want to be a designer in the first place.
Segueing into my question for you, Akilah, and I think I kind of have an idea of what your answer is going to be based on what you said earlier, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you find it necessary to separate your identity from your work? And if so, why? And if you don't, then how does your identity inform and move the work that you do forward?
I feel as if I always carried pride in my identity, but I can vividly recall being an undergraduate student, and I was told that I should not list my name, Akilah, in my portfolio submissions. And I was told that pretty directly, and it came from a space of the person was acknowledging that the potential for a lack of trust and belief of qualification because of my racial identity and gender identity. I, at the time, was going by A. Williams on all of my work, and it was saddening because that person was right, I noticed a shift in my applications. And it stayed with me for a while. I internalized a lot of that. And then eventually I kind of got to a place, again, like more lived experience. And I got to a place where I realized that I no longer would choose to silence who I am. Thank you, Alpha, for sharing so many stories of your experiences, as well as your aspirations and your perspective. I appreciate the time, and I also appreciate your thoughtful questions.
Thank you so much, Akilah and Tommie, about like all the insightful question and sharing with me the experience, your time in ID, and what you love, and what challenge that you're facing. And and thank you, ID, for having us to join this insightful and meaningful conversation here.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you for taking time out to have this very candid and transparent conversation with us. Like we were talking about earlier, representation is so awesome to have alum come back and share not just their success, but like being able to say like, I started off here and this is where I am now, and you're thriving in your career as you define success, which I think is so important.
And thank you, Tommie, for sharing your stories, your perspective, your experiences, and the very thoughtful questions. I appreciate both of you, your energy and holding space with me here today. So thank you.